All right, so you're prepping for this pipeline route manager interview, huh? Not just any job. This one comes with some real responsibility.
Yeah, and what's really cool about this field, I think, is that it's not just the traditional logistics stuff.
Right.
You've got rapidly advancing tech and even environmental awareness all kind of mixed in there.
Exactly. So we're going way beyond just, planning routes and troubleshooting today.
Hmm.
We're looking at what those interviewers are really trying to find out.
Yeah.
And of course, got to mention how RoleCatcher can help give you that edge.
Yeah, it's not just about getting this one job, right? This is the whole career path we're talking about,
Yeah.
a field that's changing really fast. AI integration, sustainability, the whole picture.
Okay, so let's just jump right into some of those sample interview questions then. I mean, that's where it gets real, right?
Definitely.
First one, describe a time you had to troubleshoot a complex issue under pressure. Now, the guide mentions using the STAR method: situation, task, action, result. But honestly, it's more than just a formula.
Totally. You really want to tell a story here. Like, paint that picture for them, make them feel that pressure you were under,
Ooh, I like that.
and then, really lay out the steps you took clearly.
So it's not just what you did, it's how you think.
Exactly. This question is all about revealing your process, your problem-solving process.
Okay.
How do you analyze the situation? What steps do you take to get to the root cause? And this is where RoleCatcher gets really cool.
Yeah.
The AI can actually help tailor your answer
Yeah, well,
to that specific company, to that role, based on what they value.
that's like having a personal interview coach right there in your pocket.
Right.
So I'm curious, have you ever used AI for problem solving in your own work?
It is becoming more common across industries.
Right.
It's definitely something to think about for the future, how you might incorporate it into your own workflow, too.
I like it.
Yeah.
Okay, next question up. How do you stay up to date on industry regulations and trends? This one I feel like is them trying to see if you're genuinely interested.
Definitely about initiative, yeah. Anyone can list a few websites, but if you want to show passion, you got to go deeper.
Okay, how so?
Mentioning professional organizations you're part of, maybe a conference you went to recently.
Ooh, I like that.
Even just mentioning a specific regulation change, something that caught your eye.
And this is where RoleCatcher comes in handy again, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they've got resources to help you stay on top of all that.
Absolutely. They curate all the latest news, the regulations, so you're not drowning in info, but you can connect it back to your learning journey.
Makes sense. Okay, here's one that I think gets to the core of what a pipeline route manager does. Imagine you're in charge of a new pipeline project. It crosses all kinds of terrain, mountains, environmentally sensitive areas, the whole shebang. How do you approach planning the route so it's both efficient and environmentally responsible?
Wow, that's a mouthful.
Well,
It's intentionally kind of daunting.
yeah,
They want to see how you think on your feet,
I say.
how you handle a complex challenge.
So where do you even begin with something like that?
Yeah.
It feels overwhelming.
First, I'd acknowledge that. Say something like, this project needs us to think about efficiency and the environment, so I'd come at it with a multifaceted approach.
Ooh, multifaceted.
Then break it down. Thorough feasibility studies, terrain analysis, geological surveys, environmental impact, the whole works.
So showing that you understand the process
Ugh.
at different aspects.
Right, and mention the stakeholders, environmental agencies, local communities, indigenous groups, too.
Oh, right.
Collaboration's huge here.
It's not just the tech stuff. It's about understanding the people involved, too.
Exactly. And again, RoleCatcher can be so helpful here for researching specific regulations, seeing examples of successful projects, especially in those sensitive areas.
Nice. Okay, this next one focuses on a super specific skill. How would you handle a situation where, say, a local community is concerned about the environmental impact of a project?
Ooh, yeah.
This is about more than just knowing the rules. It's people skills time.
Right. 100%. Communication and conflict resolution is key here. They want to see if you can listen, address those concerns with respect, and find solutions, balancing everyone's interests.
So what does that look like in practice? How would you actually respond to someone raising concerns?
First, acknowledge their concerns even if you disagree. Something like, I hear your concerns about the impact. We take them seriously and are committed to minimizing any negative effects.
Okay, good start. But then what? How do you address the specific concerns?
That's where you bring up the mitigation measures you have in place.
Okay.
Erosion control, spill prevention, habitat restoration, be specific. Mention how you engage with agencies, community groups. Transparency is key.
It's not dismissing their concerns, it's showing you're listening and taking them seriously.
Exactly. You're representing the company here. Be professional, articulate. Basia T, also genuine, empathetic.
Man, RoleCatcher's AI would be so useful here. Imagine it could analyze their perspective, what they're truly worried about, and then suggest the right language to use.
Oh yeah, that'd be amazing.
Like having a PR expert right there.
Totally. Building that trust, finding common ground.
All right, on to a question that tests those tough decision-making skills. Describe a time you had to make a critical decision about a pipeline route, a decision that impacted project timelines and costs. How did you approach it?
Classic behavioral question right there.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
They're looking for your analytical skills, your judgment. Can you handle the pressure?
Okay.
Remember STAR? Set the scene, task, action, result.
But it's more than just reciting the method, right? It's the details that matter.
For sure. What data did you look at? Who did you talk to? What were your options? And why did you choose what you did? Don't be afraid to talk about the tough parts, the trade-offs,
Right.
the challenges.
And the results are key too, right?
Yeah.
Like, did your decision save time, money, improve safety?
Absolutely. Numbers always make a strong impression. And, if there are any lessons you learned from it all, share those too. Shows you're reflective, always trying to improve.
Love it. This is another spot where RoleCatcher's AI could be a lifesaver. Imagine it analyzes your answers, flags anything that might be a red flag for the interviewer.
Ooh, that'd be handy.
It's like having a second pair of eyes, making sure you're coming across strong.
Yeah, putting your best foot forward.
Okay, let's talk technology. How do you see technology, stuff like AI and automation, changing the future of pipeline management? Benefits, challenges.
This is them testing your vision. Do you just know the industry, NOW, or do you see where it's going?
Yeah.
It's your chance to show some passion, how deep your understanding is of these forces shaping the future.
So how do you knock their socks off at this one?
Talk about AI optimizing routes, predicting maintenance needs, improving safety protocols, and automation, less manual labor, more efficiency.
Sounds great, but it can't all be sunshine and roses.
No, definitely not. Talk about the need to upskill the workforce, train people for these new technologies, and there's the ethical side of things.
Wait.
Job displacement, that kind of stuff.
It's showing you get the nuances. You're not just blindly pro-technology. You're thinking about the bigger picture.
Exactly. And honestly, RoleCatcher can even help you stay current on all those advancements.
Oh, how so?
They curate news, research, reports, so you're not overwhelmed, but you're walking into the interview with knowledge that's fresh.
It's not just textbook stuff. You're showing you're engaged with how the field is actually evolving.
Right, exactly.
All right, this next one tackles a topic that's getting bigger and bigger everywhere. What are your views on a role of sustainability in pipeline management? How can companies balance the economic stuff with environmental responsibility? This feels like more than just a technical question. It's a values question, too.
100%. They want to see that you get the environmental impact, that you're committed to doing things the right way.
Okay, so how do you even start answering something like this?
Start by acknowledging how important sustainability is, right? It's not just the buzzword.
Right.
Talk about minimizing land disturbance, reducing emissions, protecting water, the whole package. But then you got to back it up with action, right?
Yeah, it's not enough to just talk the talk.
Right, exactly. Mention specific things you've done, maybe a new environmental monitoring program you implemented, or pushing for renewable energy use, that kind of thing.
And this is another place RoleCatcher shines, right? They have a whole section on sustainability and energy, tons of resources to help you form your own views, back up your arguments.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's going beyond just opinions, showing you've put thought into it.
I like it. Okay, next question is all about staying current. How do you stay informed about the latest developments and best practices in pipeline safety and environmental protection? This, to me, screams, are you committed to constantly learning?
Definitely about initiative. They want to see you're proactive, not just relying on what you learned way back when.
Okay, so what are some good ways to show that?
Mention those professional organizations like API, the Pipeline Safety Trust.
Okay.
They've got courses, webinars, conferences, ways to stay sharp.
And of course, tons of industry publications, online resources, the whole 9 yards.
Oh yeah, tons of journals, websites, newsletters, and don't forget, RoleCatcher's got you covered there too. Their AI can build you a custom news feed for pipeline management, all the latest research reports.
It's like having your finger on the pulse of the industry, knowing what's happening, what matters.
Right. You're actively seeking out info, applying it to your work, not just passively reading stuff.
I dig it. Okay, here's one that can be kind of tricky to navigate. Describe a time you had to deal with a conflict within your team related to a pipeline project. How did you approach it? What was the outcome? Conflicts are going to happen, but it's all about how you handle them, right?
Absolutely. This is about those conflict resolution skills, how well you work in a team, can you handle disagreements professionally, find those win-win solutions, because conflict is going to happen in any job.
For sure. So how do you answer this one without making yourself sound like the one who causes all the drama?
Frame it as a challenge you overcame, right? Describe the situation, what the conflict was, but focus on the steps you took. Did you bring everyone together for a meeting? Did you really listen to each person's side? Did you help them find a compromise?
It's about highlighting your role in finding the solution, not dwelling on the problem.
Exactly. And the outcome is key. Did you resolve it? Did the team move forward? Did you learn something from it?
You're showcasing that you can bring people together, keep things positive, even when it's tough.
For sure. And actually, RoleCatcher can analyze how you talk about conflict, your resolution style, and point out any blind spots you might have.
Oh, that's really insightful.
Yeah, it can help you improve your approach.
All right, on to a question that's basically everyone's reality these days. How do you prioritize tasks and manage multiple projects at once, especially when deadlines are tight and resources are limited? I mean, we're all juggling a lot, right?
Oh, tell me about it.
So this one's relatable, but how do you answer without just saying, I'm good at multitasking? Doesn't really cut it, does it?
Nope. Describe your actual approach. Do you use a specific method? Any tools or software? Then give a real example of juggling multiple projects with crazy deadlines. Like, what were the projects? What were the specific challenges? How did you stay organized?
Show, don't tell.
Exactly. And highlight those results. Did you meet the deadlines? Deliver everything successfully. Numbers, numbers, numbers.
I like it. And this feels like another area where RoleCatcher's AI could be super helpful, like analyzing your responses and giving you personalized tips for time management, organization.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe suggesting tools or techniques based on how you work.
Like a personal productivity coach.
Okay, this next one touches on something that's becoming more and more important in any job. How do you approach working with teams and stakeholders from diverse cultural backgrounds? The world's getting smaller and smaller, so this is key.
Absolutely. This is about your cultural competence, how you navigate communication, collaboration across different cultures. They want to see if you're sensitive to those differences, if you can build bridges.
So how do you answer this without sounding like you're just ticking boxes? Oh, I'm aware of different cultures.
Start by genuinely acknowledging how important that awareness is, that sensitivity to other cultures.
Okay.
You can mention personal experiences you've had working with people from different backgrounds, whether it's at work or in your personal life.
Right.
Then give a specific example of a time you navigated a cross-cultural situation successfully.
Like showing you can adapt how you communicate, build rapport, find common ground.
Exactly. And that you respect different perspectives, ways of working.
And again, RoleCatcher as a whole section dedicated to this intercultural communication with articles, videos, even quizzes.
Oh, wow.
It's a great way to deepen your understanding if you're working in a global environment.
I'll have to check that out.
Okay, let's move on to a topic that's become critical in pretty much any industry, but especially one that handles sensitive data and critical infrastructure. How do you ensure the security and integrity of pipeline data and systems, especially with all the cyber threats out there?
This one is huge EE, no doubt about it. Pipeline companies rely so much on tech these days. This question is all about, do you understand the risks? Can you protect that data, that infrastructure?
So it's about showing you're vigilant, proactive.
Absolutely. They want to know you're not just going to wait for an attack to happen. You're already thinking about how to prevent it.
So how do you approach answering this one? Where do you even start?
Start by saying how important cybersecurity is, right? Like, what are the stakes? Data breaches, operations getting disrupted, even environmental damage. It can get serious.
Right.
Then you got to get specific about the measures you would take.
Okay, like what?
Strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, firewalls, intrusion detection, regular audits, lay it all out.
Okay.
But you can't forget about the people involved, too.
Right, the human element.
Exactly. Talk about training employees, making sure they're aware of phishing attacks, social engineering, that kind of thing.
So it's about building a whole culture of cybersecurity.
Precisely. Everyone has a role to play in protecting that sensitive data.
And of course, RoleCatcher's platform has resources for this, right? Best practices, articles, even training courses.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's a must-have for anyone in this field.
Makes sense. Okay, on to another question that's all about data, which is kind of running the world these days. How do you use data and analytics to optimize pipeline routes and improve operational efficiency?
This one's digging into your analytical skills. Can you use data to make smart decisions?
Hmm.
Because companies are using it for everything now. Optimizing operations, cutting costs, improving safety.
So it's not just about the pipelines themselves, it's knowing how to use the data to make better choices.
Exactly. So start by talking about your experience with data analysis. What tools do you use? Any specific software? Data visualization techniques.
Oh.
Then give them a real example, a time you used data to optimize a route or make things more efficient. What data did you gather? What did your analysis reveal? What impact did those decisions based on data have? Did you save money, boost efficiency, make things safer?
It's showing you're not just crunching numbers, you're using them strategically to actually get results.
Exactly. And, RoleCatcher has a whole section dedicated to data analytics for pipelines.
Okay.
Tons of articles, case studies, even training courses. It's a gold mine.
Okay, let's move on to a question that's really about communication skills. Describe a time you had to communicate complex technical information to a non-technical audience. Could be a community group, government officials, anyone who isn't an engineer. How did you make sure they understood?
This one's all about translating that tech jargon into plain English.
Yeah, that's a skill in itself.
Oh, yeah. In this industry, you're constantly talking to people who don't have that technical background.
For sure. So how do you strike that balance? Informative, but not overwhelming.
Start by acknowledging that clear communication is key and that you're going to ditch the jargon. Then give them a specific example, a time you had to explain something complex to someone who wasn't technical.
Okay, like what kind of situation?
What was the audience? What info did you have to get across? How did you make it understandable? Analogies, pictures, simple language.
Right.
And what was the outcome? Did they get it? Could they make decisions based on what you told them? Did you achieve your goal?
It's showing that you can bridge that gap, communicate effectively with anyone, no matter their background.
Exactly. And RoleCatcher actually has a section dedicated to communication skills with tips for talking to non-technical audiences.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, let's switch gears to risk management. This next one's about keeping things safe and reliable. Describe your approach to risk assessment and mitigation in pipeline operations. How do you identify potential hazards and develop strategies to minimize their impact?
Oh, yeah. This one is super important. It shows you're proactive, not just reacting to incidents after they happen, but actively trying to prevent them.
I see. So how do you demonstrate that proactive mindset? What do they want to hear?
Start by explaining what risk management means to you, right? What are the key steps? You could say something like, risk management is an ongoing process. It's about identifying those hazards, figuring out how likely they are, how bad the impact could be, and then coming up with strategies to minimize the risks. And it doesn't stop there. You have to monitor those strategies, see if they're actually working.
Okay, that's a solid foundation. But then how do you make it concrete?
Give a specific example. Talk about a real project, a real operation. What hazards did you find? How did you assess the risks? What strategies did you put in place? And what were the results? Did you successfully prevent incidents? Did you make things safer?
It's about showing them you have a system, a process. It's not just random guesswork.
Exactly. And RoleCatcher has a whole section on this, risk management in the pipeline industry, articles, reports, case studies, tons of info.
Okay, this next question is all about staying ahead of the game. What are some emerging trends and challenges you see in the pipeline industry, and how are you preparing yourself to address them? This is them wanting to know if you're paying attention, right?
Big time. They want to see if you're aware of the bigger forces at play, how adaptable you are.
Because the industry is not standing still, that's for sure.
Not at all. So you got to show them you're not going to be blindsided by these changes, that you're already thinking about them.
Okay, so how do you do that?
First, lay out the trends and challenges you see as most important.
Like what kind of things?
Aging infrastructure, for one. The demand for energy is only going up. There's climate change concerns. Regulations are constantly shifting. And stakeholder engagement is becoming more and more crucial.
It's a lot to juggle. So then how do you show them you're actually preparing for all that?
Talk about what you're doing to stay sharp. Are you taking courses, going to conferences, reading everything you can get your hands on, networking? Are you trying out new technologies, new approaches in your work?
It's about being a lifelong learner.
Exactly. Always be learning, always be growing. That's the key in this industry.
Love it. And RoleCatcher has a section dedicated to these trends and challenges too, right?
They do. It's a great way to stay in the loop.
All right, last question for this section. This one's about building a solid team, creating a good work environment. How do you motivate and inspire your team to achieve high performance? This is leadership 101, wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's about showing you understand what makes a team tick, how to get the best out of people.
So how do you prove you're not just a boss, but a leader? Someone who can get their team excited and performing at their best.
Start with your leadership philosophy. What do you believe in? Empowering your team, clear expectations, regular feedback, recognizing a job well done, building a supportive environment.
Okay, that's a good framework. But then there are specifics, right? Examples of how you've actually done this.
For sure. Give them a real example, a time you motivated your team to hit a tough goal. What was the goal? What obstacles did you face? And what did you do to get everyone over the finish line? Talk about team spirit, collaboration, how you help them take ownership.
And don't forget the results, right?
Absolutely. Did you crush those targets? Finish ahead of schedule? Get rave reviews from stakeholders?
It's about showing them that you can build a winning team and deliver amazing results.
Exactly. And RoleCatcher has a whole section on leadership and team management too.
No way. They really do have it all.
They do. It's a great resource.
All right, so I think we've covered a ton of ground here. But before we wrap up this section, I wanted to bring up something else that's super important for anyone in this field. Professional development, always learning, always growing.
Couldn't agree more.
The pipeline industry is constantly changing. New tech, new rules, new best practices popping up all the time. Got to stay ahead of the curve.
Absolutely, or you'll get left behind.
So what are some good ways for our listeners to keep their skills sharp, make sure they're still in demand?
Well, those professional organizations we talked about, API, the Pipeline Safety Trust, they offer tons of training courses, webinars, conferences.
Right.
And there are so many industry publications, online resources. You can really geek out on the latest trends and innovations. And of course, got to plug RoleCatcher again. Their platform is phenomenal for professional development.
It really does feel like a personal career coach sometimes.
It's like they're right there with you.
So, to wrap up this section, what's your final piece of advice for our listener who's gearing up for this career opportunity?
Honestly, be prepared, be yourself, and let that enthusiasm shine through.
I like that.
Do your homework. Practice those common interview questions. Be ready to talk about what you bring to the table, your skills, your experience. But don't try to be someone you're not. Let your personality come through. Show them why you're the perfect fit for this job. Such great advice. And it's worth remembering. The pipeline industry, it's a dynamic field, tons of opportunities for growth, for moving up the ladder. If you're into engineering, problem solving, making a real difference, this could be the perfect path for you.
No doubt about it.
And hey, don't forget, RoleCatcher's got your back every step of the way. From building that killer CV to practicing your answers with AI feedback, they give you the tools you need to crush it.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Use those resources.
Yeah.
Walk into that interview feeling confident.
All right, so that brings us to the end of this section of our deep dive into the world of pipeline rope manager interview prep. We hope you found it useful. Until next time, keep on learning.
Yeah.
Bye.
It can really help you pull out those key moments, and frame your answers in a way that really highlights what you bring to the table.
For sure. Okay, let's talk about sustainability for a minute.
Yeah.
How do you incorporate environmental and social considerations into pipeline route planning and design? This one's about showing that you get the impact these projects have, right? It's about showing that you're committed to doing things responsibly, that you understand that pipelines affect the environment and communities, and that you're not just thinking about getting it built fast and cheap.
Right. So how do you convince them that you're actually going to incorporate those considerations into your decisions?
Start by saying how important they are. Something like pipeline projects, they can have an impact on ecosystems, water, communities, the whole 9 yards. So it's super important to consider these factors from the very beginning.
Okay, good starting point. Yeah. But how do you actually DO that? How do those considerations show up in your work?
Talk about the specific steps, Thorough environmental and social impact assessments, talking to stakeholders early and often, and choosing routes that minimize disturbance, especially in sensitive areas.
So it's not just about avoiding those areas altogether, but minimizing the impact if you can't avoid them.
Exactly. And talk about mitigation, things like erosion control, revegetation, noise reduction, stuff like that. And it's important to monitor the project's environmental and social performance all the way through, not just during construction.
So it's about the long game, not just getting it built, but minimizing impact over the whole life of the project.
Exactly. You're not just following the rules. You genuinely care about making the smallest footprint possible.
I like it. And again, RoleCatcher can be really helpful here, right? I mean, they have a whole section dedicated to sustainable pipeline development.
Oh, yeah, they do.
Articles, case studies, best practices, you name it.
It's a gold mine of information for anyone who wants to really dive deep.
All right, let's talk about the future. How do you see technology, like AI and machine learning, changing the future of pipeline management? This one's all about looking ahead, right?
Definitely. They want to see that you're thinking about what's NXT, not just what's happening now.
Okay.
Are you excited about the possibilities? Do you want to be on the cutting edge?
So how do you convince them that you're not stuck in the past, that you're ready to embrace those new technologies?
Talk specifics. What are some real-world applications of AI and machine learning in pipelines? How are they being used right now to automate things, make things more efficient, save money, improve safety? Give them examples, real examples.
Okay, like AI-powered drones inspecting pipelines for corrosion
Hmm.
or using machine learning to predict when equipment's going to fail.
Exactly. And then talk about the good and the bad, the potential benefits, and the challenges.
Right, got to be realistic.
For sure. So on the benefit side, talk about efficiency, cost savings, safety improvements, even environmental protection. But you also got to talk about the downsides.
Yeah, like what?
New tech needs investment, right? People need training, new skills, and there are always those ethical questions, especially when you're talking about AI being used in sensitive areas.
It's about showing them you understand the whole picture.
Yeah.
Not just the shiny new tech.
Exactly. And RoleCatcher has a section on technology trends, so you can stay informed, see what's on the horizon.
Okay, this next question is all about working with the people who are affected by pipeline projects. Describe a time when you had to work with a community or indigenous group that had concerns about a project. How did you approach it? What happened? This is relationship building 101, right?
It's so important, especially in this industry. Pipeline projects impact communities, and you gotta build trust, listen to their concerns, find solutions that work for everyone.
So how do you show them that you're actually committed to that you're not just checking boxes?
Start by saying how much you value stakeholder engagement, especially with communities and indigenous groups, right? Something like, building trust is key for any project. Engaging early and often. That's how you make sure things are done responsibly, that everyone benefits in the end.
Okay, great opening. But then what? How do you actually DO that engaging?
Get specific. What methods do you use? Community meetings, open houses, newsletters, websites, social media. How do you gather feedback? How do you address concerns? How do you find solutions that actually work for the community?
And don't just talk in generalities, right?
Yeah.
Give them a real-world example.
Definitely. Tell them about a project where you had to work with a community. What challenges did you face? What strategies did you use? And what was the outcome? Did you build good relationships? Did you address their concerns? Did you create a sense of shared ownership?
It's about showing them you get it, you know how to do community engagement, and you've got the experience to back it up.
Exactly. And don't forget, RoleCatcher has a whole section on stakeholder engagement with case studies, best practices, even templates for community engagement plans.
Okay, on to a question that's all about the rules. Describe your approach to regulatory compliance in pipeline operations. How do you make sure your projects are following all the rules? This is all about attention to detail, right?
It's huge GE in this industry. So many regulations, so many rules, you got to be on top of it all.
So how do you convince them that you're not going to cut corners?
Start by saying how important compliance is, right?
Right.
And what could happen if you don't comply. Big fines, legal trouble, damage to your reputation.
Okay, so you're setting the tone, showing you take it seriously.
Exactly. You could say something like, following all the rules, that's non-negotiable for me. It's about protecting workers, the public, the environment. I don't mess around with that stuff.
All right, but then they're going to want to know how you actually ensure compliance, right?
Definitely. So talk about how you stay up to date on the regulations. Do you subscribe to industry newsletters, go to conferences and webinars, talk to legal experts, use online resources?
So you're showing them you're proactive. You're not waiting for someone to tell you what the rules are.
Right. You're out there finding out what's changing, what you need to know, and then talk about your systems, your processes. Do you have a compliance management system? Do you do regular audits? Do you train your employees on the regulations?
It's about proving you have a plan, a system. You're not just winging it.
Exactly. And guess what? RoleCatcher has a section on this too. Regulatory compliance and pipelines, summaries of key regulations, links to agencies, even alerts for upcoming changes.
It's like having a compliance officer in your pocket.
Pretty much. Gives you peace of mind knowing you're doing everything by the book.
Okay, this next question's about connecting with communities, keeping them in the loop. Describe your approach to community engagement and communication for pipeline projects. How do you make sure people are informed and involved throughout the project? This is more and more important these days, right?
Oh, yeah. People want to know what's happening in their backyards.
Exactly. So how do you show them you're not just going through the motions?
Start by saying how much you value that engagement, that communication, especially with pipeline projects. Something like building trust, understanding with communities, that's essential, engaging early and often. That's how you make sure projects are done the right way, that everyone benefits.
Okay, that sets the stage.
Yeah.
But how do you actually engage with people?
Talk specifics. Community meetings, open houses, newsletters, websites, social media. What do you use? And what information do you share? How do you gather feedback? How do you deal with concerns? How do you resolve conflicts? Give them a real-life example.
Okay, like a project where you had to work closely with the community.
Exactly. What were the challenges? What did you do? And what happened in the end? Did you build relationships? Did you address those concerns? Did you create a sense of shared ownership?
It's about showing you can walk the walk,
Yeah.
not just talk about community engagement.
Right. And again, RoleCatcher has a whole section on this. Case studies, best practices, even templates for community engagement plans. It's amazing.
All right, let's move on to a question that's all about creating a culture of safety. How do you create a strong safety culture within a pipeline organization? What makes a good safety program? This is huge GE in an industry where, let's face it, things can go wrong.
No doubt about it. Safety has to be everyone's top priority. So this question's about showing them you get it, you know how to build that culture, that you can lead by example.
Okay, so how do you prove you're not just talking the talk, but walking the walk when it comes to safety?
Start strong. Say something like, safety is at the top of my list always. Our goal is to prevent things from happening in the first place, to protect our workers, the public, everyone.
Okay, that's a powerful statement. But then how do you actually create that culture?
Talk about what makes a good safety program. Clear policies and procedures, good risk assessments, training that's actually effective, communication that works, a way for people to report concerns without being afraid, and a culture where everyone's accountable.
So you're showing them you know what needs to be done.
Right, and that you've got experience putting those things into practice. What have you done to build a safety culture? Safety incentive programs, safety audits, a way for employees to report concerns anonymously.
It's about the actions, not just the words.
Exactly. And guess what? RoleCatcher has a whole section on safety culture, too. Tons of articles, case studies, best practices. It's like having a safety expert on call, 24/7.
Okay, time for a question that really gets to the heart of making tough decisions. Describe a time you had to make a really difficult decision, where safety and cost were at odds. How did you approach it? What were the key factors you considered? This one gets real, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. It's a classic dilemma, trying to balance keeping costs down with keeping people safe. They want to see what your priorities are, how you think under pressure.
So how do you answer this without sounding like you're willing to put a price tag on safety?
Acknowledge that tension, Say something like, safety's always number one, but I also know we got to be smart with our money. So when I have to weigh safety against cost, I have a process, a way to think it through, considering everything that's important.
Okay, that's a good start.
Yeah.
But how do you actually make that decision?
Walk them through it, step by step. What was the situation? What was the trade-off you had to make? What data did you look at? Who did you talk to? What were your options? What would happen with each option, especially for safety? And why did you ultimately choose what you did?
You're showing them you didn't just flip a coin, you thought it through carefully.
Exactly. Don't shy away from the ethical side of it either. Did you think about the risks to workers, the environmental impact? Did you bring in safety experts?
It's proving that safety was a top priority, that you made the best call with the info you had.
Right. And RoleCatcher can actually help you prepare for this kind of question, too.
Oh, how so?
The AI can analyze your past experiences, find situations where you had to make those tough calls, safety versus cost, that kind of thing. It can help you remember the specifics, frame your answers in a way that shows you're committed to safety, that you can handle those high-pressure decisions.
That's super helpful. Okay, let's move on to a question that's all about making things better. Describe a time when you saw an opportunity to improve something in a pipeline project or operation. How did you make it happen? What were the results? This one's about problem solving, taking initiative, being a change maker.
Absolutely. They want to see you're not just going through the motions, that you're looking for ways to do things better, smarter, safer.
Okay, so how do you show them you're that kind of person?
Start by describing that opportunity. What did you see that could be improved? A process that was clunky. A new technology that could be used. A safety hazard that needed fixing.
Okay, so you've identified the problem, or the opportunity, I guess. What's next?
Walk them through how you made it happen. Did you do research? Did you come up with a plan? Did you get people on board? Did you have to overcome obstacles? Be specific. What did you do?
Show them you're a doer, not just a talker.
Exactly. And what happened in the end? Did you get the results you wanted? Did you save time or money? Did you make things safer, more efficient?
It's all about showing the impact you had.
Right. And RoleCatcher can actually help you prepare for this kind of question too.
Really?
The AI can analyze your past experiences, find those times when you took initiative, solved problems, and made a real difference. It's like having a personal innovation coach.
Okay, let's talk about sustainability. This next one's all about the big picture. How do you see the role of sustainability changing in the pipeline industry? What are the key trends and challenges?
It's about more than just the environment, right?
It's about thinking holistically, about the social impact, the economics. It's all connected.
So how do you convince them that you're not just jumping on the sustainability bandwagon, but that you really get IT?
Start by talking about the trends that are shaping the whole sustainability conversation. Things like climate change, the push for renewable energy, cutting emissions, the need for more transparency, more accountability.
Okay, that sets the context. But then how do those trends translate into challenges and opportunities for pipeline companies specifically?
On the challenge side, you can talk about investing in new technologies, adapting to those changing regulations we talked about, dealing with the risks of climate change and social activism, and making sure you're engaging with stakeholders in a genuine way.
Right, got to be real about those challenges. Absolutely. But then flip it and talk about the opportunities. Pipeline companies can be leaders in the energy transition, transporting those renewable fuels, developing carbon capture technologies, creating jobs, boosting local economies. There's a lot of potential there.
So you're showing them, you see both sides of the coin, the risks, AD, the rewards.
Exactly. And that you're excited about how the pipeline industry can contribute to a more sustainable future.
And of course, RoleCatcher has a section dedicated to sustainability in energy.
They do. It's a great resource.
Okay, let's move on to a question that highlights the global nature of this industry. Describe your experience working on international pipeline projects. What are some of the unique things you have to consider? This one's about proving you can operate in different environments, right?
Oh yeah, different cultures, different rules, different parts of the world. It's a whole other ball game.
So how do you show them you're not just a domestic pipeline expert, but a global player?
Start with your experience. What international projects have you worked on? What countries? What regions? And then talk about the unique challenges you faced in those specific contexts. Don't just say it's hard. Give them concrete examples. What was it actually like working in those different environments?
Okay, so what are some of the challenges people might run into on these international projects?
Navigating different regulations, for one. Finding local partners, dealing with language barriers, building relationships with people from different cultures, adapting to different ways of doing business. It can be a lot to handle.
For sure. So then, how did you overcome those challenges? What strategies worked for you?
Did you come up with clear communication protocols? Did you invest in cultural sensitivity training? Did you build relationships with local experts? The point is to show them you've got a track record of success, that you understand the nuances of working on a global scale.
And RoleCatcher's AI can help you prepare for this kind of question too, right?
Absolutely. It can analyze your past experiences, find those that highlight your global mindset, your ability to handle international projects. It can even give you insights into the cultural and regulatory landscapes of specific countries and regions.
That's incredibly helpful, especially if you're going for a job that involves a lot of international work.
Exactly. It's like having a global strategy guide right there in your pocket.
All right, let's move on to a question that's about thinking long term, about the bigger implications of pipeline projects. How do you balance the need for new pipelines with the need to protect the environment and address climate change? This is a big one these days, right?
Huge. Pipeline companies are under a lot of pressure to prove they're not just about profit, but about sustainability, about doing their part for the planet.
So how do you show them you get it, that you're committed to finding solutions that work for both the energy needs and the environment?
Acknowledge the challenge straight up. You could say something like, look, pipelines are essential for meeting our energy demands, but we can't ignore the environmental impact. We got to find a way to develop those resources responsibly, to minimize our footprint.
Okay, that sets the tone. But then how do you actually do that? How do you balance those priorities in the real world?
Talk about the steps you'd take, the concrete actions, things like thorough environmental assessments, working with communities and indigenous groups. Choosing routes that minimize disruption, using mitigation measures to reduce impacts, adopting new technologies that are cleaner, and monitoring the environmental performance throughout the entire project.
So it's about showing them you're thinking about the environment every step of the way.
Exactly. And that you're keeping up with those new technologies, those best practices that are constantly evolving, always trying to do better.
And RoleCatcher can help with that, right? Their platform has all that info on sustainability in the pipeline industry.
Definitely. It's a great resource.
Okay, time for a question that's all about leadership. What do you think are the most important qualities of a successful pipeline route manager? This is them wanting to know if you understand what it takes to excel in this role.
It's a chance to show them you get it, that you've got the skills and experience to be successful.
So what are those key qualities? What does it take to be a great pipeline route manager?
Think about the core skills, the must-haves. Strong technical knowledge, for sure. You got to be a good communicator, someone who can build relationships, think strategically, lead a team, motivate people, and you can't forget about that commitment to safety and environmental responsibility.
It's a long list.
It is, but don't just rattle off the list. Bring it to life with examples from your own experience. Have you ever had to solve a really tough technical problem, navigate a tricky meeting with stakeholders, lead your team through a crisis? Tell them those stories.
It's about showing them you've got the receipts, you've actually done this stuff.
Exactly. And don't hold back on the passion. What gets you excited about this work? What challenges do you enjoy? What kind of impact do you want to make?
That passion's contagious. It'll make you stand out.
For sure. Show them you're not just there for a paycheck. You actually care about the work.
Okay, let's move on to a question that's about staying ahead of the game. How do you stay informed about the latest trends and innovations in the pipeline industry? This is about showing you're committed to constantly learning, right?
Absolutely. Things are changing all the time in this industry. New tech, new regulations, new best practices. You got to stay curious.
So how do you prove you're a lifelong learner? What do you tell them?
Talk about how you stay informed. Do you read industry publications? Go to conferences and webinars, network with other professionals, follow thought leaders on social media, and give specific examples. What have you learned recently that's caught your attention? Any conferences that opened your eyes to new ideas? Have you tried out any new approaches in your work?
It's about showing them you're actively seeking out knowledge, that you're always pushing yourself to learn and grow.
Right, exactly. And of course, RoleCatcher can help with this too. Their platform has a whole section dedicated to industry news, research, best practices. You can even customize it to your interests.
Okay, time for a question that's about bringing people together. Describe a time when you had to make a tough decision and there were multiple stakeholders involved, all with different perspectives, different priorities. How did you handle it? What happened in the end? This is classic stakeholder management, right?
It's a big part of the job, especially on those big pipeline projects. You've got government agencies, communities, landowners, environmental groups. They all have a stake in what you're doing, and they don't always agree.
So how do you prove you can handle that?
Yeah.
That you can build consensus, bring people together?
Acknowledge the complexity right off the bat. Say something like, when you're making decisions that affect a lot of different people, you got to work together, listen to everyone, and try to find solutions that address as many concerns as possible.
Okay, good starting point. But how do you actually DO that? How do you make a decision when everyone wants something different?
Walk them through your process. How did you gather information? Build relationships, facilitate conversations. Did you hold meetings, do surveys, create an online forum for discussion? How did you figure out what the key issues were, what options you had, and how did you ultimately arrive at a decision?
Okay, and then what happened? Did your decision work for everyone?
Right. What was the outcome? Did you address everyone's concerns? Did you reach a consensus? Did you find a solution that everyone could live with?
It's about demonstrating your ability to navigate those tricky situations, build bridges, make decisions that consider everyone's needs.
Exactly. And RoleCatcher's platform has a whole section on stakeholder engagement. It can really help you develop those skills.
Okay, let's talk about communication, something that's essential in any job, but especially important when you're dealing with complex technical stuff. Describe a time you had to explain a complex technical issue to someone who wasn't technical. How did you keep it clear and concise? This is all about translating engineer speak into plain English, right?
It's a skill in itself. You got to be able to explain things in a way that anyone can understand, whether it's a community member, a government official, or even a colleague from a different department.
So how do you show them you can do that?
Start by saying how important clear communication is, Something like, I believe that communication is key to building trust and understanding. When I'm talking to people who aren't engineers, I always try to use simple language, avoid jargon, and make sure they're following along.
Okay, that sets the tone, but then they're going to want an example, right?
Definitely. So give them a specific situation where you had to explain something technical to someone who wasn't. What was the situation? Who are you talking to? What did you have to explain? And how did you make it easy for them to grasp?
Did you use analogies, pictures, tell a story?
Whatever works. The point is to get the message across. And then tell them what happened. Did they understand? Were they able to use that information to make decisions? Did you achieve your communication goal?
It's about proving you can communicate effectively with anyone, no matter their background.
Exactly. And RoleCatcher's platform has a whole section on communication skills too, so you can always brush up on those techniques.
Okay, time to talk about risk management. Describe your approach to risk management in pipeline operations. How do you identify, assess, and mitigate those potential risks? This is about keeping things running smoothly, right?
It's about safety, about reliability, about preventing those small problems from turning into big disasters.
So how do you show them you're on top of it?
Start by explaining what risk management means to you. You could say something like, risk management is an ongoing process. It's about finding those hazards, figuring out how likely they are to happen, how bad the consequences could be, and then coming up with ways to reduce those risks. And it doesn't stop there. You got to keep an eye on things, make sure those strategies are actually working.
Okay, so you've got the theory down. Now, how do you apply it in the real world?
Give them an example, a real project, a real operation. What hazards did you identify? How did you assess the risks? What did you do to mitigate those risks? And what were the results? Did you prevent incidents? Did you make things safer? The more specific you can be, the better.
You're showing them you've got a system. You're not just hoping for the best.
Exactly. And RoleCatcher's platform has a whole section on this. Risk management and pipelines, articles, reports, case studies, tons of info.
Okay, this next question is about looking ahead, anticipating what's coming next. What are some of the big trends and challenges you see on the horizon for the pipeline industry, and how are you preparing for them? This one's about showing them you're not just living in the present, but thinking about the future.
Definitely about being strategic, adaptable. The industry's not standing still, and you got to be ready for what's coming next.
So what do you tell them?
Talk about the trends that you think are most important, the ones that are going to shape the industry. Things like pipeline integrity management, that's huge. The increasing role of technology, the regulatory landscape is always changing, and stakeholder engagement that's only going to get more important.
It's a lot to keep track of.
It is, but you got to stay informed. So tell them what you're doing to prepare. Are you taking courses, going to conferences, reading everything you can get your hands on? Are you experimenting with new technologies, trying out new approaches?
It's about showing them you're a lifelong learner, that you're not afraid to embrace change.
Exactly. The pipeline industry needs people who are adaptable, who are always looking to learn and grow. And RoleCatcher's platform is a great resource for staying on top of those trends and challenges.
Okay, let's wrap up this section with a question that's all about leadership. How do you motivate and inspire your team to achieve high performance? This is about more than just being a boss. It's about creating a culture of excellence.
It's about getting people excited about the work, giving them a sense of purpose, and creating an environment where they can thrive.
So how do you show them you're that kind of leader?
Start by talking about your leadership philosophy, your beliefs. Do you believe in empowering your team, setting clear expectations, giving regular feedback, recognizing and rewarding good work, creating a positive and supportive environment?
Okay, that's a good foundation. But then they're going to want to see how you've actually put those beliefs into practice.
Definitely. Give them a real-world example of a time when you led your team to success. What was the goal? What challenges did you face? How did you overcome them? What did you do to inspire and motivate your team? Did you build team spirit, foster collaboration, empower your team members to take ownership? And what were the results? Did you achieve the goal? Did you exceed expectations?
You're painting a picture of yourself as a leader who can get things done.
Exactly. And RoleCatcher's platform has a whole section on leadership and team management too, so you can always brush up on those skills.
All right, I think we've covered a lot of ground here. But
Yeah.
before we move on, I want to talk about one more thing that's essential for anyone in this industry, professional development. This field is constantly evolving. You got to stay ahead of the curve.
Absolutely. It's a lifelong journey of learning and growth.
So what are some good ways for our listeners to keep their skills sharp and make sure they're staying relevant?
Those professional organizations we talked about, API and the Pipeline Safety Trust, they're great resources. Tons of training courses, webinars, conferences, all kinds of stuff to keep you up to date. And there are so many industry publications, online resources. You can really geek out on the latest trends and innovations. And of course, RoleCatcher's platform is fantastic for professional development. They have all kinds of curated content, expert insights, and personalized feedback.
It really does feel like having a personal career coach in your pocket.
It's like they're right there with you every step of the way.
So to wrap up this section, what's your final piece of advice for our listener who's getting ready for this exciting career opportunity?
My advice is simple. Be prepared, be authentic, and be enthusiastic. Do your homework, practice your answers to those common interview questions, and be ready to talk about what you bring to the table, your skills, your experience, your passion. But most importantly, just be yourself. Let your personality shine through. Let the interviewer see what makes you and why you're the perfect fit for this job.
That's great advice. And remember, the pipeline industry is full of opportunities for growth and advancement. If you're passionate about engineering, about problem solving, about making a difference in the world, this could be the perfect career path for you.
Couldn't agree more.
And don't forget, RoleCatcher is there to support you every step of the way, from building your CV to practicing your interview answers with their AI-powered feedback. They've got the tools and resources you need to succeed.
Absolutely. Take advantage of those resources and walk into that interview with confidence.
All right, that brings us to the end of this section of our deep dive into the world of pipeline rope manager interview prep.
Phew. That was a lot.
It was. But hopefully our listener is feeling much more prepared now. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and good luck with those interviews.
See, yeah, it was a whirlwind of questions, that's for sure.
It was. But hopefully everyone listening is feeling a lot more prepared for their interview now.
Fingers crossed.
So we've talked about a ton of specific questions, how to approach them, how to really showcase your skills and experience. But before we wrap up this whole deep dive, I wanted to touch on something that's super important for anyone in this field, or really any field, and that's professional development. Never stop learning,
Couldn't agree more. This industry is changing so fast. New technologies, new regulations. You got to stay ahead of the curve.
Exactly. So what are some good ways for our listeners to do that, to keep those skills sharp and stay in demand?
Well, those professional organizations we talked about, API, the Pipeline Safety Trust, they're gold mines for professional development. Courses, webinars, conferences, they've got it all.
Right. Those are great resources.
And don't forget about industry publications, online resources, networking with other professionals. There's so much out there.
Like a never-ending buffet of knowledge.
Pretty much. And of course, got to plug RoleCatcher one more time. Their platform is phenomenal for professional development. They have curated content, expert insights, personalized feedback. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's like having a personal career coach right there in your pocket whenever you need it.
Exactly.
So before we say goodbye, any final thoughts for our listener who's getting ready for this exciting career opportunity?
Just a few things. Be prepared, be yourself, and let your enthusiasm shine through.
I love that. Those are words to live by.
Do your research. Practice those common interview questions. Be ready to talk about your skills and your passion, but don't try to be someone you're not. Let your personality come through. Show them why you're the perfect fit.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
And hey, remember, the pipeline industry is a dynamic field. Tons of opportunities for growth, for making a real difference in the world. If you're passionate about engineering, problem solving, this could be the perfect path for you.
It definitely could.
And don't forget, RoleCatcher's got your back every step of the way. From building that killer CV to practicing your answers with their AI-powered feedback, they've got everything you need to succeed.
Absolutely. Use those resources and go get them.
All right. That brings us to the end of our deep dive into the world of pipeline route manager interview prep.
Whew. We made it.
We did. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, happy learning.
See you later.